Hello, welcome back to session 2 of the Hidden Power of Language. And today I am going to jump right in. I am going to share my screen and hope that this quick video comes through for you.
Betting against you in the crossword tournament. You'll understand when you're a parent placing large wagers against your own children. I hope you're not mad.
No, I'm not mad.
You sure you're not mad?
No, I'm not mad.
You sure you're not mad?
No, I'm not mad.
Mr. Teddy, can you ask Lisa if she's mad? What's that, Mr. Teddy? You're saying that you know women, and that when women say they're not mad, they're madder than ever? Oh, she's gone. Can you drive me home? I'm a little drunk. Lisa! Lisa! Lisa, sweetie, please look at your daddy.
You stop being my daddy as soon as you bet against me. All I have now is a mom, which is why I'm taking her maiden name from now on, Lisa Bouvier.
Sorry about that. I meant to pause that. So I hope that you were able to see that. If you weren't, because I hope that things go well. I'm live with you. Well, I'm with you now, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook watch party in my group or my page. So you can leave me comments. Let's make this a conversation. But if you couldn't see or hear the video, the premise was it was the Little Simpson, and I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know is it Lisa's the Little Simpson? But Homer bets against her in something, and she says, "I'm not mad." And he asks her 3 times, "I'm not mad. I'm not mad." And then at the last part of the clip, he says, "Lisa, would you look at Daddy? You lost the right to be my daddy when you bet against me." So this particular session is called What is Language? And it's starts, we're going to base it in the beginning here on this premise of saying I'm not mad. So before we jump right into the actual content, I want to thank you again for being here. Remind you that in the comment section, wherever you are watching, even though this is pre-recorded, I am there with you live. So it should be around 10 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, maybe. So leave some comments, ask questions. I'm here for you. Even though it's pre-recorded, I am right there with you. So I'm going to jump right into this session. This is foundational. This particular session is foundational on our understanding what language is and why there's a hidden power to it. So you see the little person that I put there, and the little person is saying, "I'm not mad." Okay, have you done that before? Leave a comment. I mean, even though in the video you heard Homer talking to the teddy bear saying, "Oh, you know women, and when women say they're mad, they're not mad." But man, woman, whatever, we've all probably done that. Now let's think about the concept of language for a minute. Oh, let me tell you, I do have the timer set. So yesterday's session, I think, went 25-ish minutes. So that's really what I'm shooting for, is under 30 minutes. So got the timer set. Why, like if we think about language, if I asked you to give me a definition of language, you would probably say something like a window into your mind, a window into your feelings. Like this is the way, language is the way we tell people what we're thinking. But if that were true all of the time, then when the Simpson, I'm going to say Lisa, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Lisa. When Lisa said, "I'm not mad," then if language is an insight into our mind and what we think, then she's not mad, right? If you say you're not mad, well, then you must not be mad. But we know that's not the case. So what's the deal? Why do we say that we're not mad when we really are mad? Language is so strange. You know, there's all these hidden nuances to it. And I'm going to tell you in a minute why we say we're not mad when we really are. But I posted on Facebook, this has been several years ago, my husband's a photographer, and I said, being married to a photographer means being confident enough in our marriage to hear things like, "I just need a couple of young girls to experiment with, And I clearly put a smiley face. Well, look what people say, things like, and I took their names out, sounds worse than it is. Someone says, I remind myself that nothing is hid from God. Everything eventually comes out in the open. I like the being confident in your marriage, but working on me. I'm like, people, I said that I put the smiley face. I was just kidding. So what is the deal with language? Well, language is really a risk management deal. What do I mean by that? I'm going to show you a few pictures. Now this is, if you were with me I did 10 days of content with Stress Club, and I did it in my private Facebook group. I think I just did it. Isn't that funny? This has only been a week ago and I forgot. Anyway, I did I did it at my Facebook page and group, but specifically about my book, The Stress Club. And so this will be a little bit of overlap if you were with me there as well. And I will talk about some of the things from my book because it's really important. This is where I really learned about this foundation of language. So let's just do a couple of things here. Let's say that you were looking at your clock and your clock said 9:13. Most of us, and you can put a comment in the section, round. You might say it's 9:10 or you might say it's 9:15. Now there are some of you out there who would say 9:13, but many people will round. What does that mean? You have the choice. In the last session, I said that it was very important to understand that words are choices. Language is a choice, but it's a hidden thing. We don't always know that we're making it. So when it says 9:13, you could say, if somebody says, what time is it? You could say it's 9:13. You might round up, it's quarter after, or you might round down, it's 10 after. You might say, oh, it's about 9:15. There are many choices that you would make. So I'm going to give you some possible reasons that you might round up or round down, and you don't even really think about the fact that you're doing it. Let's say that you're trying to get out the door to go to church or to go someplace, and you are trying to get the people in your house to move it. Then you might round up and say, it's 9:15. There's a goal there, right? You're trying to get the people to get out of the house. Let's say that you're trying to get to church or wherever, and you're the one who's running slow. Then you might say it's only 9:10, or it's only a little after 9, or it's not even 9:15. Do you see how you might make that choice? So it's something as simple as the time on your clock, but there are choices when you make it. Now, some people, when they respond, because I put this question out on Facebook, what would you say? And some people said, well, I would say 9:13 because I'm OCD, and being very specific. Now, back to the personality session, you might say it's 9:13 if you're a decaf and you're very detail oriented and the time is the time. Lots of things affect it. Let's do a second picture. You go to the store. There's a shirt that's on sale. It's $14.99. So let's say that you and your husband or wife, spouse, just as an example, or someone you're living with, you're trying to be frugal and save money. And so you buy this shirt and you say it was only, probably you'll say $14. You round down. But let's say that this is a store that you went in and you think it's ridiculously expensive. And when you tell the story to this person, whoever, then you might say it was $15 plus tax. Oh, by the way, if you round down, you might say 14 bucks. Bucks seems to make things cheaper than dollars. Again, and if you're trying to, the goal here might be to create this store as being a monster. So it's $15 plus shipping or plus tax. You see, you're making a choice that's very simple. You don't know you're doing it. One more. This slide just kind of puts that together and also lets us go forward. How we use language, just another example. I love you versus love you versus love you. Think about the way that you talk to people in your world. Maybe it's on Facebook. I love you is much more intimate than love you, which is much more intimate than love ya. See the difference there? Think about the way that, like if you were in one of my seminars, and now it's also the way you say it, true, but if I said, you know, I love you, you might be like, whoa, I'm sorry, back up. But if I said love ya, totally different. Rounding up versus rounding down, we talked about. And then the reason that you're here taking this class is the words that we choose to use in tough situations. How do we choose them? How do we know what we're choosing? Language is action. So in traditional language studies, in traditional psychology, if you were to go to a psychologist and you were struggling with something in your life, then that psychologist might say, how do you feel about that? What do you think about that? And then you would say the words, and then you would talk about it. Well, we believe in my field, which I'm getting ready to explain to you, called discursive psychology, that language is action. We believe that even though, of course, language can relay your thoughts and your feelings, of course it can, but it doesn't always. And there's no way that I can know for sure. Like, I can't get inside of your brain. And even if I was a neurosurgeon and I could get inside of your brain, there's no test that I can do inside of your brain to know what you're really for sure thinking. I can't get in there and take a swab and then put it on a microscope. I can't draw some of your blood or brain matter out and do some sort of test on it. There's really no way for me to know. But what I can study is what you do with your language. I can study the action that happens with your language. And so that action could be, I'm going to go the other way around, to persuade. It could, with the price, it could have been to persuade that the store is bad or that you are frugal. It could be to create power in a situation. It could be to characterize something as good or bad. The one that we're going to focus on the most is when you talk, you tell people who you are. When you use language, you create an identity for yourself. I'm going to give you examples to help this make sense. So what is language? This is what I just said a minute ago. The field that I study, discursive psychology, we believe that language is action. You are accomplishing something when you speak. And we can study conversations. We can look at those and dissect them and pull them apart. This field of study I mentioned in the last session is not well known. When I started my dissertation and I wanted to study how women talk about stress, and my committee was like, oh, you want to know how women experience stress? No. Oh, you want to know how women feel when they have stress? No. You want to know what choices they can make? No. I want to study what's happening during conversations. And it took me a couple of years to find this field. And when I did find this field, I found a woman named Margaret Wetherell. Margaret Wetherell, and I'll put a link to her, is one of the founding members of this field of, I'll call it critical discursive psychology, discursive based on discourse, which means conversations. And I want to read to you, sorry, you guys, something that I think is very, very beautiful in the way that Margaret Wetherell describes something. She talks, there are three parts to this discursive psychology field and how we study conversations. The first one we call interpretive repertoires or themes or building blocks. And this is what she says. This was in a video lecture that she did in 2011. I'll put a link to it. She says, when we speak, we are joining in with a long history of ways in which people have packaged up the world and made sense of it. We're joining in with loads of other people's voices and a kind of conversation that's been going on for a long time. So think about when we talk about bargains, sales, church, time, getting out, football, marriage. Let's talk about one. And again, this session is a lot of overlap from my stress club session. So if you saw that one, just stay with me because I'll have a few new things to add. Let's talk about the topic right now of cleanliness or hygiene or personal appearance. There are ways that we talk about that. So that's a theme. So, but when we talk, we've been talking about a topic typically for a long time. And we make choices of words that I like to think of floating out there in the air. So what it says on the PowerPoint slide is during conversation, you have access to multiple word choices and you will choose according to the context of the conversation. The terms and the metaphors are part of our culture and part of the way in which we talk. So let me use the example of cleanliness and hygiene. There was a sticker posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago during this COVID crisis, and it looked like a voting sticker where it said, I voted, but the sticker said, I showered. All right, now let's think prior to this whole pandemic and social isolation, we talked about, we tended to talk about hygiene in terms of professionalism, dressing well, sometimes designer clothes or being beautiful or handsome. But now there's all these jokes where we talk about it as, well, I showered today, but I haven't in 2 weeks, or pictures of the bushy eyebrows, right? So the way that we talk can change over time. In my study, so what I studied, one thing I studied was how do women talk about stress? So stress is a topic, just like hygiene or football or marriage or singleness or whatever. Stress is a topic. And so the first thing I wanted to know was, what ways are they talking about it? What building blocks, what words, what choices? One thing that they did was to talk about stressed out as being a reality of living in the real world. So here are a couple of the one conversation that shows that. So these are fake names. I interviewed 30 women, just had conversations with them in pairs. So Bessie, fake name, says, yeah, I guess too, when you're actually experiencing life and not in a fantasy, and they were talking about a commercial, this woman who had everything, like she was having this, obviously some sort of fantasy of just pamperment and luxury, and that's not the real world. Like we are obviously not in that world. Roscoe says, yeah, not at all, I guess. Bessie says, but yeah, in the real world, what does that mean? Oh yeah, work, family time, being responsible for yourself and your family. That's how we talk about stress as being part of the real world, right? So that's the first thing, is there are choices of ways to talk about a topic. The bargain we talked about, there's choices of ways to talk about the shirt and the sale. There's choices of ways to talk about time. There's choices of ways to talk about stress. But you see, this is hidden. I hope you get that. I hope you see that this is not something, just checking the time, this is not something that we tend to think about because it hasn't been brought to our attention. So that's the first thing, is what are the ways, what are the choices that we can make? The second thing that happens in this field of discursive psychology, where language is action, is that we make a choice and we pick a position for ourselves in the conversation. So it's, the second thing is called subject positions. That's like a little ID badge I have there. How do we use these building blocks, these words, these repertoires to put ourselves in the conversation? How do we use it? Remember, in action, how do we use it to create an identity? How do we use it to tell people who we are? So one of the ways that my women did this in the study was to create an identity of, I am a responsible woman. So this is a fake name, Ginger. And I was asking the women in this conversation about sleep. Do you get enough sleep? Now I'm going to stop in the middle of this conversation, so stay with me a minute on this. Ginger says, but there's a point when I'm up too long that my stomach starts hurting and I start feeling ill. And if I don't go to sleep, I'm going to be a wreck pretty quick. It happens pretty quick, so I do get enough sleep. That's a huge priority in my life. Okay, so let's stop there. She says, yes, I feel bad if I don't sleep. It's a huge priority in my life. Now, this is where in one of the first slides I put that language is risk management. If Ginger stops there and says, yes, I do sleep, I do get enough sleep, what's the risk? The risk is she might be seen as not responsible. You know, wow, you must not have a lot going on if you get enough sleep. Wow, wish I could do that. Must be nice. You must not have kids. You don't work where I work. Do you know, and I hope I say this enough to make sure that you're with me. The things I talk about, it doesn't mean it's the norm, but it is a pattern. So it doesn't mean that all people do this. Okay, so now what I'm saying is she doesn't stop there. The next thing she says is, but I'm not lazy. I mean, I'm up at 4:45. Well, it's not that I sleep and I don't take naps and I don't sleep on the weekends and stuff. So See where she went with that? So it's like saying, I do sleep, but don't call me lazy. So she's using her word choices there. I'm not lazy. I'm up at 4:45. I don't take naps. To tell you, if you're in conversation, in fact, it was me, I'm responsible. Make sense? Okay, so the first part of discursive psychology is there are ways that we've been talking about topics, and we tend to choose from those ways. And when we choose from those ways, we are doing something. We are positioning ourselves in the conversation. Now, the last one really shows where the risks are. There are hidden motives. There are risks that we don't even realize. So the third thing that happens in our conversations is we might experience a dilemma. And it's called an ideological dilemma. Language is not that simple. Let me show you, and this is kind of getting toward the end of our time together. This is one of the most powerful examples of language and why I'm so passionate about the way that we use language. Now, we use language in many ways. We did personality last time that influences the way you talk, but we have to bring it to the forefront of our minds as to how we're using it. So this is fake name Alice. Alice taught kindergarten, I think, and she was pregnant for the first time. So I'm gonna stop in the middle here and show you where the dilemma happens. And it happened with Ginger too. She says, I think sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not stressed out. And I'm like, well, you must not have a lot going on. I know that sounds bad. I just want you to be honest about, okay, no, I'm going to stop there. So notice Alice is doing what Ginger didn't want people to do. Like if somebody says they're not stressed out, Alice would be like, well, you must not have a lot going on. She did that, right? But then she stops and she says, people, especially before I was pregnant, like if I said to some of my friends that have children, I haven't slept and I'm tired and I'm stressed at work, and people will say, just wait till you have kids and that kind of thing. I'm going to stop there for just a second. Now she's saying she doesn't like it when people do it to her. So do you see when you're talking, I hate to use this phrase, but I do use this phrase sometimes. You might think of it as being a flip-flop, because in your mind, there's risks to what you're saying. And so as Alice first talks, it's almost like, and I don't know, because remember, I don't have the brain swab. I can't draw the blood. I can't do anything. I cannot know for sure what Alice is thinking, but I can see what's happening in the conversation. So it's almost like there's a shift there as she's saying, well, you must not have a lot going on. And then it's sort of like she shifts and realizes she doesn't like it when people do that to her. But the next thing, I'm going to advance the slide here and I'm going to put a circle on the most powerful thing in my entire study. I hope that I don't know if you can see my actual Zoom bar here. So she says, people will say, wait till you have kids and that kind of thing. And it's like you're not validated if your suffering is not the same. The reason I say that that's the most powerful statement in my study as far as language goes is when it comes to creating identities for women in stress. Women thus far, unless they've read my book or they've heard me speak or they're just like so naturally intuitive, we haven't even known that we are using language that bonds us together over our suffering. We don't want to bond over our suffering. We don't even know that it's happening. Phrases like must be nice, wish I could do that, you must not have a lot going on, you must not be very busy. These are all words we can choose from, and then we can position ourselves in the conversation as being responsible. But in our mind, we kind of go back and forth, and so we can shift mid-conversation. I think that might have been a little bit deep. I hope that it made sense to you, but the bottom line for our language, and I'm going to stop my screen share here. The bottom line is there are topics in the world that we talk about. Most of those topics we've probably been talking about for a long time. Maybe it's about how you work. Maybe it's about how you parent. Maybe it's about how you raise children. Maybe it's about church or family relations, whatever it is, we've been talking about these topics for a long time. And so we tend to pick from words that are already out there. It's part of our culture. It's the way that we talk. And in doing so, we do an action. Now, there are many actions, but the one that I think is the most important as we talk about this language is how we create our identity with one another. And that can be also related to creating power, creating superiority, showing fear. All of these things are how we present ourselves. And then also that in our minds, there can be conflicts we don't even know are going on. I might talk about stress or marriage or religion in one way to a friend, in a different way to a boss. It's not that we mean to be manipulative or change who we are. It just means that language is powerful, and I want us to get in touch with the hidden meaning. So I hope that helped you today. I hope you enjoyed the Simpsons video, and you will let me know if it actually was Lisa. You will let me know if you do say, I'm not mad, when you really are. You'll let me know how much sense this made to you. I can tell you now that tomorrow's session will be about other factors that influence our language. Besides, we talked about personality. What are some other things that affect us? We'll talk about gender and a couple of other things. So in my relational espresso style, and in my desire to create myself to you as being someone who is kind and encouraging and loves you very much, I will say love and hugs, and see ya tomorrow.